Thanks again for joining us round two with Dialpad at defendmybusiness.com to go over, we did UCaaS, the last recording. This time it is CCaaS and your contact center solution. So really excited to hear all about Dialpad's contact center offerings, AI, all the cool things you guys have going on. And yeah, for those of you catching up, if you haven't watched the first video, by all means, go check it out. And if you're here for Contact Center to learn about Dialpad and what they do, stick around. We're going to dive into it shortly. So thanks again for joining us, Raf. We've got a couple of people just sitting listening in, Rob, Leah, and Janae. So they'll just be in the background. But for all of you watching and listening, we're going to get right into it. So thanks again, Raf. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
There we go.
I really appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good now. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me, Russ. I really do appreciate it. Like, it's nice to be back, guys. And like what Russ was saying, if you haven't had the opportunity to go see our other stuff, please go take a look at that UCaaS section so you can get a nice understanding. But for today's demo, I have some really cool stuff to show you guys. It's our contact center solution. I'm going to show you two sides of the story. So what it's going to look like being an agent, what it's going to look like being a manager, and then, of course, what else you can get out of the contact center environment that could truly benefit, a business, really. So, all right. So we're going to hop into the contact center, guys. We're going to touch on what it looks like being a rep in the space first. So what it actually looks like being those frontline runners, right? Like you're running a contact center. One important experience we want to have is we want to have our reps have an excellent experience when it comes to taking phone calls. What we found in today's day is we all know in a contact center, it's not the easiest space to be in. It's really not. So when you have a rep that's struggling or it's not really getting the help that they can get, that's why we tend to see all the churn from the reps, right? Where they're not able to stay happy and stick with their job. But with the contact center solution we have to offer, we found that it's actually helping representatives stay within the space and be a lot more happy, which is really exciting. So I'm going to actually call in and we're going to see what happens in the background of what the rep sees. So we're going to unlock some new tools. So if you guys haven't seen our UCaaS section yet, I highly suggest you do. But I'm going to answer that call. And this is what it looks like being a rep, right? So from the get-go, you can see the call is being transcribed in real time. So that's really awesome, right? We already know, hey, my call is being transcribed in real time. What does this really do for the rep? Well, think about the transcription as a note-taking tool. The rep can actually go back in conversations and do keyword searches and see, hey, what was this conversation about, just with a click of a button. And what's also beneficial is the rep is able to go back and see any past history that the person might have had if they called before. So how many times have we called into a contact center where we had to repeat ourselves multiple times? I'm sure you have, Russ. I've so frustrating, right? Like you just went on a 5-minute spiel and next thing you know, they're like, let me transfer you over to my next rep. They can take care of you. And then they're like, what did you need help with again? You're like, I just got done explaining that. So what this enables agents to do is they don't have to worry about that anymore. So what's really great about this is, as an example, I can actually go back and see, hey, when did they talk to this person? Well, I saw the last true conversation we had was on Wednesday, and I can actually see the summary and those action items that Dialpad AI had generated for me. So not only is this beneficial for me as a rep to go back in and see, hey, what is this actually about? But it's able for me to enable myself to be like, perfect. I know exactly what this is about, and I know exactly how to approach this call when I'm talking to Bill. So not only is it good for Bill because, hey, Bill's like, I called you guys on Wednesday. I actually am calling it back in on the same issue. Well, I could see exactly what they talked about on Wednesday, which is nice. And even better, I could do a keyword search. So this is what I was talking about earlier. This even works for our normal UCaaS product. But let's say I look up the word pricing because Bill called about pricing. Not only can I start searching through text messages that might have been exchanged between Bill and I, but I can go back and see any past calls that contain the word pricing. As you can see, August 14th was the last phone call that we mentioned the word pricing in. Now I can click into that call. I can pull up the full-blown transcript and then just be able to assist Bill.
Now, I have a question. It's just more of a comment. So this will work across, let's say I'm an organization where I have some CCaaS seats and then some UCaaS. It doesn't matter. It's all integrated. It will work across both. So if sales rep who's an outbound rep, not tied to the contact center, they have a call in the system that will also show up tagged to the client.
Yeah, as long as it's not from their personal number. If they have a
I see.
personalized number, then it's like personal to them, right? But if I
Mhm.
call from the company number or the contact center number, then we all share the same data.
Got it. Okay, good to know. Definitely.
Yeah, really good question. And this brings me to the next point, right? So this is cool stuff. Like the rep is now able to give guidance to the customer quickly. They don't have to repeat themselves and they're able to just feel confident about this conversation. But what if I could tell you there's something else that can really make the rep step their game up even more? How many times have we had to deal with someone saying, "Let me put you on a brief hold while I look that up for you"? That can
Hmm.
be two things. They actually really mean that. Like they really have to do a phone like a lookup for whatever reason. Their CRM is crazy and all that stuff, right? Or they just genuinely don't know what they're doing. So they're actually sitting there. If they're if they're in person, they're raising their hand right now, asking their
Hmm.
manager for help. If not, they're messaging their manager on the side or they're looking for this information wherever they have it to give the answer to the customer. So the customer is now waiting. Now it's a waiting game. Well, I'm going to put you on hold. You can either mute them or put them on hold, right? Well, we could take that away and make this even easier. So what we have included now is there's an assist tab here. I'm actually going to show you how it works in real time. Think about words that are being said in a conversation. And let's say you're running a new promotion or you got something going on that you want the reps to know immediately how to handle and answer the question to if the customer asks it. I could set up a glossary of those keywords or terms and it could populate information in front of my rep like a battle card. So I could be like, oh, they mentioned this. I know exactly how to reply. So check this out. Bill's calling in again, right? But he's interested in pricing one more time because he doesn't remember. Pricing is that keyword, and take a look at that. It
Oh
populated a
yeah.
real time assist card. And now, as a rep, I can read the data that my administrators or my managers made for me. And I can even click on links. So they can consistently update this as much as they want and they can make it whatever context they want. But just think about how powerful that is, Russ, for users that are maybe new, right? Those new reps that are on the phone, like they're just not sure what to do. They can now feel confident giving those answers. And it's even good for the senior reps because maybe the senior reps are like, oh, dude, like this is just nice because although I know the answer, maybe we recently updated the website or the page for the knowledge. I could just have this in front of me and now I can still be just as fast.
I've got a question about that then. So let's say it's in the legal, industry, and it's referencing a file. So if they say, oh, it's file number, 1 2 3 4 5 6, would that pick up on that and then associate? Obviously, maybe that's not the right example because legal, you don't want everybody accessing certain things, but just in general, if you said, oh, I'm calling about file number this, um, would it actually reference? Can you have it reference file numbers and things like that to pull up that information for the rep?
It can as long as it has a link that we can go
Of
to.
course.
Yeah. But yeah,
Okay.
the words are customizable, right? So you could say every time they mention file number XYZ or file this or file that, they could set that up so they can immediately have this information readily available for them, which is nice.
That's cool.
And what we're
Makes it easy.
finding is, yeah, it really does. And what we're finding is because it's easy, Russ, is like we're able to put in reps on the phone a lot faster now. So I could train them for 2 months. And on the third month, typically where I would do an additional type of training, I can now say, hey, I'm going to put you on the call or put you on the phones for like right on month 3. They're going to be afraid, of course, and probably nervous, but this will give them the confidence they need to be able to continue those conversations because as long as I create these cards for them, they don't have to do anything. They just sit here, they talk to the customer says something. If they don't know the answer, as long as that card is there, they can easily put themselves into that space and sound confident on the phone.
Mhm. Absolutely. I see a ton of applications for business, just referencing things, banking even. Oh, I'm interested in this product. And it all of a sudden brings up all the information on that, or this credit card, or that.
Yeah,
And that information is there at the touch of their, with their fingertips. So,
absolutely. It's a really, really good feature. And this is just for the rep, right? The rep has access to this. And you can only imagine what kind of other data is going to be available for the managers out there, right? The
Mhm.
manager is now going to see even better stuff than what the rep is seeing now. But this is all nice and easy. And just as a side note, if you happen to need to record your rep screens, they have 4 monitors, they got 3 monitors, they got 2 monitors, or maybe one. We
Mhm.
can record screens across the board if you need to. So if you're doing some sort of like, hey, I need to make sure my agents are doing what they're doing, you can record every single monitor while they're on those calls, and you can make sure that they're doing what they need to be doing.
Right on.
Yeah. And alongside with this includes your redaction. So if you guys are taking sensitive information like social security numbers, date of birth, address, you got credit card numbers and stuff like that, our transcription can automatically redact that information from the transcription so it doesn't show. It'll just star it out if you need it.
Okay. Yeah. And so that's automatic, or you have to program it based on keyword, like, my credit card number is, it recognizes that and then it redacts it, or do you have to sort of key those in?
Yeah, good question. So it's actually pretty automatic. It looks for numbers in particular.
Got it.
Right. So anything that's typically longer than your 2 to 3 digits, right? Like a credit card number is not going to be 2 digits long, or
Mhm.
social is not going to be 2 digits long. As long as it's longer than those 2 to 3 digits, you're going to have that redaction working for you.
Nice. Now, if for some reason it's missed, can you go in as a rep or manager or somebody after the fact and redact something, or
Absolutely. Managers can always go back in and redact any information they want from the transcript.
very helpful for sure? Because a
Yeah.
lot of people capture that information or give it out without realizing the ramifications of, if it's stored digitally, it's accessible in theory by somebody very bad and, hacking systems. So
Yep. Absolutely. It's a good point. And there is one more thing that contact centers can have. This would be an add-on for them. This is not typically that something that's native, but this is something that I tend to see used in help desk contact center. So like people that are running the contact center for IT of their company, right? What we call this is playbooks. So playbooks are typically used in the sales world, but they can be converted into a contact center system for support, or maybe if you even have a sales contact center too, they could work that way. But how this works is it looks at the conversation. And right now I'm using Bant as an example. This is already out of the built playbook, it's already built. What
mhm,
happens is the rep can follow these guides. They can ask the question, right? I could say, for example, like, what's your budget and all that stuff. I'll actually
mhm.
show you live how it works, but I could ask that question and it'll wait for the customer to answer. Once the customer answers, it'll actually check the box off for me and it will collect
Oh,
the context of what the customer said. So we're finding like IT help desk, we're creating what we call as their customized playbook. So here's an example. I made one for Bill Nye, the Science Guy, talking about global warming.
mhm.
I can actually ask some questions about that. AI is listening for me to ask it, and as long as I ask it and there's an intent response, it'll check the box for me. So just think about how good this could be for those contact centers, because they could even include scripts at the top. So once the call is answered, this pulls up in front of them, and they're like, "Hi, my name is Raphael. Like, I'm actually calling in because X, or thank you for calling XYZ company, whatever it might be." You could put that there, and the rep can follow this step by step, and the managers can go back and say, hey, you're missing 50% of your playbook. Like, what's happening? Why are you forgetting to ask these questions? Whatever it
Mhm.
might be. And now it becomes a coaching opportunity that's easily done because they can always follow the playbook adherence.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So let me show you it live in action. I'm going to unmute the mic now and you're going to be able to see what this looks like. So I'm talking to Bill Nye, right? We were talking about pricing earlier, but let's say, hey, Bill, you know what? I know you called in about pricing, but do you mind telling me a little bit about what your budget is? Are you able to spend anywhere between like $1,000 to $2,000, or is like 3,000 your budget? You mind telling me a little bit about that? Well, Bill, on the other hand, is like, actually, Raph, I'm a baller today. I could spend about $5,000. How does that sound? Well, as you can see now, budget was checked for me.
Yeah.
It collected Bill's response. And now, not only can I go back and see that stuff, but my manager can go back in and say, hey, Raph, I saw you were on a call today with Bill. What'd you guys talk about? Oh, let me just look at your playbook. Oh, okay. I see you actually hit all the boxes. Great job.
Mhm.
And you can filter that data. So if they need to filter that data for whatever it was, like, hey, I need to see every time we talk about pricing or budget, let me go ahead and filter that data out and I can see that stuff. And we'll be able to show some of that and when it comes to the manager view of things in just a second.
That's
Cool.
that's great for, again, for management. I mean, automation, pulling reports. Okay, how are we
Yeah.
doing? Okay, which reps are hitting targets, which aren't, whether it's support targets, service targets, or sales targets. And well, those that are, are clearly doing this. Those that aren't are missing these. And if we're hitting all of them, and we're still not hitting what we have as those KPIs, how do we adjust it from there? So I think that's amazing. That's great.
Absolutely. I would have to agree. And just as a final portion here, really quick, from what an agent can do, they can also share their screens. This also works in UCaaS as well, by the way. But let's say you got a center that maybe you're dealing with people that just aren't necessarily tech savvy, or maybe you need to text them a link because they need to see what you're doing. I can actually share my screen with someone. It'll shoot them over a link through text. They can copy that link and click on it, and they'll be able to view my screen in real time. So just as a side note, what I tend to
Mhm.
see is contact centers that are doing a lot of IT. Although they might have their own remote access stuff, maybe they want to guide people to do it without them having to control their mouse. They could just
Mhm.
share their screen like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. Go ahead and replicate what I'm doing."
Yeah, some people that are concerned about security and, is it legit?
Yeah,
Well, you know what? Instead of me taking control, you watch me. So,
exactly. Cool. Well, that brings me to the second portion, right? So the rep has access to some awesome tools. You saw that here. We got those real
mhm,
time assist cards. We got those call summaries and action items. We got those playbooks if we need them. But what does the manager see? Like, what can the manager do? Well, couple things. Let's dive into what the view of a manager is. This is where I like to show. This is like one of my favorite things to show because how quick this response is just by looking at this. So here's the dashboard. I get a high level overview. I can see my customer, my agent. Sentiment is a big thing. So at Dialpad, we do sentiment analysis. So
mhm,
what that means is we're not looking at how loud you're speaking or how fast you're talking. We're actually looking at what is the context of the conversation. So think of I'm calling you, Russ, and we're talking about. Let's just say we're talking about us troubleshooting my Outlook, right? I'm troubleshooting my
mhm.
Outlook with you. You're the tech guy. You're the IT guy, and I'm just getting frustrated. Like I'm not yelling at you, but I'm getting frustrated at the situation. AI is actually able to pick up on the text conversation that's happening. Be like, hey, this is what they're talking about. This customer doesn't sound happy based off the words he's saying. So I'm actually going to tell you that this call is not going good anymore. So right now it's positive. You can see this demo so far, me and Bill are happy. We talked about his budget. He's a baller. He's all excited, right?
Mhm.
But that could change in an instant. And what Dialpad does is it can go from a positive to neutral or just back to negative. And the manager can see this in real time, which I'll actually show you in just a second. But you're also able to see what the call is about based off call purpose. So we talked a lot about tech and product support because we brought the IT conversation up, and the AI is like, "Hey, actually, this call is mainly about tech and product support." It could summarize that within a word or two words, and just think about how powerful that is. Because as a manager, you don't have to be like, "What are they actually talking about?" Well, AI says this is what it is, and I can verify that by clicking this button, and I could actually skim through the conversation myself. So I could look at the real time transcription without having to listen in. Now, it does say I'm listening in, but that's because I'm a manager and a rep at the same time. So I'm hearing
Right.
myself. However, the manager does have the ability to listen in silently. They can barge in. So, worst case scenario, like let's say, Russ, you're like, dude, I need to take over Raf's call because Raf is really sucky right now. You could
Yeah.
take over the call. Or you can whisper to me. So maybe you're like, I can help Raf. I don't want to go ahead and text him this. I want to whisper this to him. So you can actually whisper to me and say, hey, Raf, you should be doing this instead. But the customer can't hear you saying that. Only I can hear you saying that. So we offer that kind of functionality for people that are running contact centers. And we find that it's widely used by many. And it's like
Mhm.
almost like a need to have type of environment.
Now, is there a way to have reports, where conversations we were neutral, even positive, but then turn to negative, and then it pings you as the manager. Is there a way to set that up?
Yes, absolutely. So right now it is considered positive, right? So I'm
Mhm.
gonna throw it a curveball now. Now I'm gonna make Bill really upset. So Bill's like, you know what, Raf? Actually, I'm calling in because I'm so frustrated and upset because I cannot get this issue resolved. And it seems like you guys do not know what you're doing. It's been nothing but a negative experience for me. And if you cannot get this resolved, I will cancel all of my service with you. Please get me a manager. Please. Right. So it doesn't sound good. Right. Well, not only did I get a supervisor request card,
Oh
that
yeah.
sentiment went to negative, and now I got alerted by my dial bot that something is happening. So the manager can click view call details, and
Hmm.
it bolds that specific portion of the conversation for why that was triggered.
Hmm.
So we're finding that managers no longer need to do micromanagement. They can just be alerted by dialbot when a call starts going south. So if they're busy doing other tasks throughout the day, they could be like, you know what? Like, I'm not going to look at my keyboard anymore. I just need to step away for a second. Maybe I need to grab a snack or go to the bathroom. But if something happens, I could just check my phone because I've Dialpad installed, and I can receive an alert. Or even better, maybe I don't have it on my phone. I can get it sent to my email, or I can even get sent a text message of when something is happening on a phone call.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. I like that. I like, that full 360 view and notifications, being able to jump in and support your team real time.
Yeah, I feel like that's something I wish I had access to. I used to run a contact center many moons ago, and I used to literally have to sit next to someone and plug my headset
Yeah.
into a dongle. Yeah, you remember those days.
Oh
It was
yeah.
not fun. So
No.
this takes it out of the equation, and now you have access to things like reporting where you can actually confirm this. So maybe you didn't get the chance to respond in time. We can go back and look at the KPI analytics and see what's happening in the background, which is exactly what we're going to do right now. So I'm going to end the call. This is one other thing the agent has access to, by the way. They have dispositions. So if you as a company, you have to codify your call. Like after every single call, you need to codify
Mhm.
what it's about. You can create your own unique codes, and the rep is forced to select these codes before they can even get off the screen. So you know they can't just, hey, I'm gonna just disregard it. No, I'm gonna say,
Mhm.
look, it's resolved. I can add notes, and then I can even identify what kind of playbook stuff I dealt with today, and I can
Mhm.
complete that, and then we're good to go. So from the manager's experience, let's look at the analytics. Like, what kind of analytics are available with contact center? Well, fantastic analytics. Okay. So we unlock things like heat maps. So if you guys are ever curious about staffing problems, this is a perfect way of identifying that. You can
Mhm.
identify your highest points of the day for call volume. And what's even better is like, you're like, well, is it really staffing or is it my reps taking too long? Take a look at those answer times. If you notice that your speed of answer is significantly dropped, it's more than likely you have a handle time issue as opposed to a staffing issue. But if you notice that your handle times are great, but you're still getting nailed with calls, you know that you should probably start staffing people during that time frame of where you're starting to get really busy.
Right.
And unlike everything else, all these reports that I'm going to show you guys today, they're all able to be exported. So I can export this on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis and just have it sent to my email box. And then I can kind of set it and forget it kind of deal.
Mhm.
But you get access to the basics, right? So calls coming in, calls going out, calls being missed. And what's great about our analytics is everything is clickable. So if I actually click on these abandoned calls, so the calls I hung up out of queue, I can click on that and I can say, oh man, it was Bill. He called in at this time. He only waited in queue for 4 seconds. Very impatient
Mhm.
guy. But I can verify that information. And that's the great thing about these analytics is I can easily click into them and start seeing the bigger picture. But what else can you do with this? Well, I want to one up this a little bit and show you some other features I think are just kind of mind blowing, if you will. I'm sure we've got this before where a customer gets off the phone. the rep either had to ask them or they send them an automated message that says, do you have a couple seconds in your day to complete this survey?
Hmm.
I've, we all get those, right? But the response rating on those are so low. So Dialpad did a survey. We found that only 2 to 5% of people's customers actually respond to those surveys. So it's a heroes and zeros situation. So think about, you're either really upset with the service you just received and you cannot contain what you need to say, so you're gonna
Hmm.
blast them off with the survey,
Yeah.
or you had the best experience in your life and you're like, I hope this rep can go ahead and get a raise from this because they're just awesome. Let me go ahead and fill out this positive survey response. So if you have any customers that are really just like, you want to focus on customer satisfaction, but you're not getting the numbers you need, Dialpad has a solution for that. We actually call this AI CSAT. How this works is we can send out physical surveys if you want, or instead of waiting for someone to respond to a survey, what if I can tell you that AI can grade that call for you without the customer even having to respond to a single thing?
Mm-hmm.
So, how this works is we look at the context of the conversation. So, remember how I showed you how the positive and negative thing was working?
Yep.
It's the same boat, but we look a little bit deeper than that. So we look at, how did the call start and how did it end? And based off the conversation, we can say, out of one being the worst to five being the best, we can actually grade those phone calls. So if we took a look at this customer satisfaction rating, 19% is pretty terrible. But let me tell you why. I talk to Bill all the time, but Bill is never satisfied with me because I always make him mad. But that's my fault. I know that I'm doing that. But if I want to click into this, I can look into kind of like history. Like, is this going up? Is it going down? Like, what's going on? And I can even see the rep. So right now, I have a 19% score, which is actually 10% worse than last month, which is terrible. But if I click into it, I can really do that deep dive. So one is the worst. I got a couple fours in here. I even have five. I could filter these out. So let's say I don't want to look at the calls that are good. I want to look at the calls that are between 1 to 3 score. I can filter this out. And now I can start clicking on the context. So, well, this call is terrible. Why? Let's click into it. Here's today's call that we just completed. You can actually see it was already graded and it was a poor score. Why was it a poor score? Because I left the call at a negative sentiment at the end and we never changed it. Right. So you can actually see it here.
Hmm.
Negative sentiment was brought up at this specific portion of the phone call. Here's a transcript. So I can actually go back in, listen to it, see what's going on. As you can see, I had a lot of positive sentiment, but it was early on in the phone call. I mean, it's really up to me. And I can even see, like, look, he asked for a supervisor. They talked about pricing twice. It's really, really interesting what kind of data you can pull from this. And the
Hmm.
manager is easily able to say, well, I agree with the AI score, or maybe they don't. Maybe the score is like, you know what, I don't necessarily agree with it, but what's cool about this is, okay, they can't change what the AI said, but
Hmm.
they can be like, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and say Rob, right? I'm gonna go ahead and tag Rob. And I can say, why was this a negative sentiment portion? Why was this negative sentiment happening? Right. So I can actually go ahead and tag a specific portion of the call, which is really
Hmm.
cool. And then Rob can see this, and now I can use this as a coaching utility to coach him, like, hey, the rest of your call was great, but this one portion of the phone call really messed you up. What happened? Let's talk about it. Let's see what we
Hmm.
can do to make this better. So, what we're finding is managers can easily come in here, just start skimming through the transcript. They can even search the transcript, right, for keywords, just like we were doing that keyword search earlier.
Hmm.
And I can start saying, hey, this is where it's happening. This is what's going on. What can we do to help make you better?
Now, I do have a
Uh,
question. It's sort of related to this. So,
Sure.
will it also take integration? So, I'm assuming omni-channel. So, text, chat from the website, and then the customer's like, you know what? I'm not getting my message across. Typing calls in. Will it kind of take all of those as well and give you the picture?
Good question. So we do offer that omni-channel, right? So we do
Mhm.
offer chat channels, texting channels, and things like that. Now, the AI CSAT wouldn't run in the back of those, but since the channels are all tied together, you can see that history. So you can actually say,
Mm.
"Hey, it started as a chat, and
Mhm.
then it didn't go anywhere, so it escalated to a phone call."
Right.
So yeah, you can get that big picture there, which is nice because it's all in the same spot, and you're not having to go to different places to find that information.
Yeah, because there's times where I've done it, where I've started on the chat and I'm just like, this is going nowhere. I'm going to call in because
Absolutely.
I'm just typing busy. It's just easier if I talk it out for 5 minutes instead of sit there 15 trying to text on my phone. Um, and the fact that you can bring them in, and it could have started off really positive on the chat and then maybe turned negative for whatever reason, or vice versa. Started negative in the chat. They said, "Why don't you call in? We talk this out," and then it turns positive. So having
Yeah,
that full picture.
exactly. And I mean, I'm sure you dealt with it too, where you chatted with someone, and then when you called in, they're like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah, yeah, oh
You're
yeah.
like, I was just talking to someone like 5 minutes ago on chat. They're like, "Oh, we can't see that."
Mhm.
This gets rid of that because it's all integrated in the same place. So you can see that from the app. The managers can go and run the reports. They can see that data. It's all easily available. And that's the really big benefit of Dialpad is it's that one TrueCast platform where everything truly is in that same spot.
Great.
So final two things I'd like to show from the analytics standpoint, and then we can kind of wrap it up here, is remember how I talked about those playbooks?
Mhm.
You could see the adherence here. So now I could be like, oh, you did 25% of your playbook. What happened to the other half? Well, for today's demo, we only talked about budget. But as you can see, I can easily identify this. I can look at the descriptions and the
Mhm.
questions that were asked. And then I can make sure, like, hey, Raf, like you did this. This is great. But you missed the rest of this.
Mhm.
Why? And then now they can start coaching that. And then even
Yeah.
better, you got people that do QA team, right? Maybe they have a QA team. So people that actually really listen to calls. And I used to do QA a lot. I QA'd many, many, many phone calls in my lifetime. And personally, I would try to look for the calls that were the shortest. But there was times I would have to find calls that were like an hour long or so, right? And really just double check them and make sure they're okay. But
Mhm.
what if I can tell you that we can save that time? So instead of actually scrubbing through calls and scrubbing and scrubbing and scrubbing, we have another AI tool that you can create questions on, and the AI can listen to the phone call for you and say, yes, they did do this, or no, they didn't.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
we actually call this AI scorecard. So take a look at this. 64% of the scorecard was able to be completed by AI. A couple ways you
Wow.
can do this. Maybe you don't want some questions answered by AI, Russ. Maybe you want like only 6 out of the 10 to be answered by AI. And you want
Mhm.
the other ones to actually be manually looked at through by actual people. You can do that. So in this case, look, did the rep greet the customer? They sure did. Did they use a framework? They did. Did they actually ask open ended questions? They did. And look, here's some right here that I might have not had because the AI skipped over them because they wanted more of a manual person to go through
Right.
it. And now I can actually add feedback and share this grade with the rep. But instead of me having to scrub through this whole phone call, AI was able to scrub through half of it for me, get those questions done, and now I have a lot more time left in my day.
Mhm. That's
So
powerful for sure. Time management is a big thing.
yeah, I mean, we're finding this in healthcare, HVAC. I mean, law offices where they can actually bill for people's time. I mean, there's
Mhm.
just so many places that this works well in, but especially that QA portion. So we're finding that they're not getting rid of their QA team, but what they're actually doing is they're like, QA, go through this. Well, instead of them spending 3 hours a day listening to the phone calls, they spend 30 minutes of their day listening to the calls, have AI help them with the rest,
Mhm.
and then they get more time back in their day to do other productive things. And the company is finding like they're having a much better time of use or more use of their time and then making sure that they're actually a lot more satisfied because they're not sitting there just scrubbing through hours of phone calls and they're like, oh, I can actually do this today because I didn't have to scrub through 3 hours of phone calls. I can actually do XYZ and actually fulfill my duties.
Yeah. That's
So
yeah, this is great. I love it. I've also worked in call center, not directly myself, but in with the teams, and knowing their process and seeing it firsthand, this would have eliminated a lot of redundancies, a lot of slow processes. This is
Oh yeah,
great.
it's huge, and that's kind of like why I like to close up my contact center talk a little bit. Is like there's a lot that we showed today. We showed the agent's perspective, we showed the manager perspective, and we showed the KPIs and all the other cool stuff you can pull from it. And the thing is, it just works so well together. So thank you so much for your time, Russ. Thank you for letting me show you guys this contact center platform. I'll have Russ and Rob take it away for the rest.
And just one question, Raf. So
Sure.
if I'm a business and I'm watching this and I'm not quite sure, do I qualify for, or which teams maybe could use this? Do you have any guidance for those watching that, maybe not as technically savvy and know they need something but aren't quite sure how? What advice would you give? Just here's how you can kind of identify.
Sure. So a couple questions I would ask myself is, are my agents actually retaining their information when they're talking to their customers, right? Are they retaining it? Do I have this information available for me? So if a customer calls me back, do I have the information of what they called me about before? Another great thing I like to ask myself as well is, what kind of coaching tools do I actually have? If I have any at all, are they easy to use? Are they hard to use? Or if I don't have any, what kind of coaching tools can I use and get out of this demo that you guys saw that can truly make my time beneficial at the company? So those are the three things I'd like to focus on: is what information you have available on customers, the coaching utilities, and then lastly, what kind of assistance can you provide to the reps in real time to make sure they get what they need? If you fill in any of those blanks, contact center is a perfect way of getting the job done.
Excellent. Thank you. And again, our team at Defend My Business, they're also here to help you to ask those questions, identify your needs, whether it's UCaaS, CCaaS, mix of the two. And we actually have some great promotions, which another video will be coming out on some cool things that Defend My Business is working on in conjunction with Dialpad. So stay tuned for that. So Raf, thank you so much. Really
Of
appreciate it. For
course.
those of you watching, hope you got something out of this. And again, if you're just looking for a solution, give the team at defendmybusiness.com a call or reach out to us. We'll go through all of this stuff with you. We actually have a 20-minute questionnaire if you have the time and really are serious to go through, just to, again, identify some of the things that Raf mentioned, to fill in those blanks for you and recommend the right solution. So um, feel free to reach out anytime. We're here for you. And thanks so much, Raf and Rob and team. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Not a problem.